the thin red line. The V Squad Night Patrol is sworn to protect humanity from rogue vampires operating under the cover of darkness that prey upon humans. In 2020 AD, after Dracula, scientists developed the blood orange. They produced human blood that allowed vampires to grow their own blood supply, plant a seed, grow a tree, harvest your very own blood oranges. That eliminates the need to feed upon humans. This triggered the first great vampire migration, freed from the need to feed upon humans. These vampires wanted nothing further to do with humans, and they carved out great ice caves in the Antarctic and far north, within which they built a new civilization of vampires. Their only connection with outside society was through the internet. Freed from human contamination and misdirection, their culture flourished and thrived in isolation. Yet an almost equal number of vampires chose to stay and reintegrate with human society. Both choices were available to all, yet a small minority of vampires chose a third way, their own way, to reject the amnesty outright, and neither migrate from nor rejoin human society, choosing instead to remain outside of society, a law unto themselves and true to their nature, predators preying upon the larger society, within which they remained hidden and out of sight from the humans. To combat this third group of vampires, humanity formed the V Squad Night Patrol, an auxiliary police force that, jumped a little bit. An auxiliary police force made up of mostly vampires that would work the night shift and give the Vampire Alliance a new weapon in the war to stop the outlaw vampires, fighting a guerrilla war against society. These vampire humans, members of the V Squad Night Patrol, suffering from the same vampirism as every other vampire, chose not only to rejoin humanity, but to stand with it and join in the fight to defend society against all that stalk in the night. They were the V Squad Night Patrol. But soon it became apparent that there was strong support within the vampire community for these outlaw vampires who rejected the amnesty offered to them by society and refused to register with the authorities, and instead chose to live outside the law, feeding upon uninfected humans. And so the V Squad Night Patrol was formed mostly by vampires who chose to stand with humanity, and they were shunned by their community, who instead looked to the outlaw vampires. So it was up to these brave officers of the Night Patrol, who formed the Thin Red Line, to stand against the darkness. Marsha Wong and Hillary Hammerstein, two vampire members of the V Squad Night Patrol, were out on patrol in their cruiser when they spotted a vampire chasing a human female. So they called it in and then gave chase. It was an easy call, and Marsha noticed that they both had the same stamp on their hands from a local bar, the Red Wine Pub. This vamp must have tracked her from the club, thought Marsha. They had both, Marsha and Hillary had seen it before and they'll see it again, but something was different this time. The vampire seemed civilized, cultured, with a restrained nature, and not wild at all like the outlaw vampires Marsha and her partner were used to, and sure enough, he was a registered vamp who got his monthly shipment of blood oranges. Something didn't add up. The vampire Marsha deals with are seldom registered. This was highly unusual, and as for the female human, she didn't seem devastated or horrified at all at coming this close to being a male. In fact, she seemed worried about the vampire. Was he going to be okay, she asked. almost as if she was in on it. Marcia knew that something was going on. They both willingly accepted their punishments for getting caught. The usual slaps on the wrist when your main goal is preventing discord within society, keeping both sides from rejecting the status quo, and she realized that they were part of some type of subculture. That she was unaware of, but she wanted to find out more about it. And the Red Wine Pub was where she would get some answers. The vamp was sent to a re-education camp to reorientate him back towards blood oranges and away from free-range feeding. He was sentenced to 2 weeks at the camp, but because of overcrowding, he'd be out in a day. And the girl was cleaned up and checked for bite marks. Finding none, she was free to go. On her next night off from the V Squad night patrol, Marcia spent it at the Red Wine Pub. The night was uneventful till it was time to leave, and then, as she left the club, she followed some noises she heard to an alley behind back, and she leapt up onto the fire escape and observed what was going on from this vantage point. People she hadn't seen in the club were leaving from a back entrance. There was a club underneath the club, thought Marcia. Suddenly there was a vampire beside her on the fire escape. They fought, but Marcia was able to break free and escaped into the night. And then the vampire who had attacked her did not pursue. She simply watched Marcia as she vanished into the darkness and wondered what this stranger was up to. Humph, the girl thought, that girl could make my jelly shake, she said to herself, and then just flew away. A military general entered a room and sat at his desk and opened a file and began reading. Operation Dracula. The UN had been tracking an individual known as Dracula since shortly after World War II. His origins were unknown, and it was believed that he fed off of human blood and left his victims, human zombies, drained of their blood. The lack of oxygen soon left them brain dead, and yet they were unable to die. Even if they did eventually recover, it would not be as they had been, but now is something that is as much dead as they are alive. And only through blood transfusions can they be kept alive in this zombie state. Then it happened, the first known transmission of vampirism from Dracula to human. It did not result in zombieism in the human. Dracula was interrupted, so he fled into the night. The soldiers who found the woman in her bed, drained of blood and dying, brought her, the woman that Dracula had been feeding upon. Yeah, wait a minute, I must have deleted a little bit. I probably have it somewhere else. Where, so the woman Dracula had been feeding upon was brought to a field hospital at first and stabilized, then transported to Germany. And that is where the first outbreak of vampirism among human-to-human contact began. Sergeant Jenny Jelly Roll Jones told a fascinating tale of mind control and vampirism. She said while in a deep sleep, her eyes popped open, and she rose from her bed. She was compelled, she said, by desires she could not control, that she could not resist. As she walked to the window and against her will, she unlocked Jesus. Compelled against her will,